All right, we are officially live and welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. My name is Michael Hicks. I am your host with the most, and I am I got an exciting topic for you to discuss. But before for you and my audience to discuss today, but before we get started, I just want to give you a few words from our sponsors. Can't sleep, got the aches and pains. You got to check out these CBD oil, and it's proven formula because it's Amish tested, and you can go strictly to superfungummies.com. You get 50% off at checkout. All you do is you take 9 to 10 drops, put it underneath your tongue before you go to bed. You sleep like a baby. Sleep is so detrimental for all of us, and that's why I'm promoting this product. It's a CBD oil, and you get 50% off being a Framing New Heights listener. All you got to do is go to the checkout counter, enter in the promo code New Heights, and you can get 50% off. There's 3 different sizes. Highly recommend it. Highly check it out. If you're struggling with purpose, if you're struggling with direction, maybe your faith is lack, maybe your relationship struggle, maybe it's career, maybe it's uncertainty, maybe it's your relationship with your kids. What I've been doing is I branded a wonderful framework that I call Live to Thrive. In that framework, I've built and I've worked with CEOs, superintendents, government officials, teachers, first responders, everyone, and people that are in relationships, moms and dads, people like you and I, that I'd be able to encounter a biblical teaching component with my life. And I have put together a wonderful plan that can really help you change that perspective in your life and maybe that empty pit that you have that's really been struggling in your life. So if you want more information on this, I would like to, before I set up a call with you, just simply fill out a questionnaire. It takes 15 minutes. If you want more information on that, you can go to framingnewheights@gmail.com and you can ask for that questionnaire there, and then I can help you provide that. Or if you want more direct information from me, you can go to Michael at thrive.com. Now, welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. And I'm your host with the most. I always like to say in today's podcast, I've really wanted to dive in for a long time, is the title says it all. And it's the lie that shatters without consequence. Now, imagine this for a second. Take this thought process. Someone speaks a single sentence, and in just those few words, it's a lie. And in seconds, your entire world shifts. Now, this has been embedded into me from clients that I've worked with. And I'm going to talk to you and give you like a direction on how to maybe regain that inner strength that you've been looking for in the midst of your season. So maybe it's your partner telling you or telling someone you've been unfaithful, or maybe even and you never obviously have, right? Or maybe it's your boss spreading doubt about your integrity at work, or maybe it's a parent or a friend whispering something that undermines your character, your reputation. And here's the kicker, though. And then there are no consequences for them, right? Like they can spread this gossip, they can spread this lies. I'm here to tell you and share with you that there is. And that piece, it comes on the day of reckoning. And I know we are like, well, we live in a life, but our life, for many of you, have to know this, that this is not our eternal life. Our eternal life is in heaven and everlasting life. So, and you may think that there are no consequences for them, and maybe so at this particular time, like none, zero, right? And then they walk untouched while your world is burning down. Does that feel like you? If that is you, today is a great podcast for you to listen to, because I'm really going to uncover some things and uncover the psychology behind all of this, the manipulation, the parent alienation, all of these things I'm going to discuss on today's podcast. So, so as we're unpacking the psychology of all this, the lie, right, that can destroy your reputation, can destroy your character, who you are as a person, and also not only that, the manipulation, the control behind the lies that really destroy people. Like there are people that are put in prison because of lies. And I'm going to explore today the narcissistic behavior. I'm going to explore today the personality disorders. I'm going to explore that that different relationship that you have with your maybe you're in a divorced relationship, right? And you have your kid part of the time, and they have their kid, they have the same kid at the same time. So, or it's shared custody, shared placement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So, and I'm also going to talk about why some people lie, not just to protect themselves. However, they lie to control you. So it brings into my first segment, the weight of the lie. Let's break this down for a second. So let's ground this into reality for a second. There's studies that's shown from the University of Massachusetts found that 60% of adults, ready for this? This is pretty staggering. 60% of adults cannot go 10 minutes in a conversation without telling at least one lie. Amazing, right? We're founded on lies. Our world, our secular world is founded on lies. There was slavery, right? A lie. Color of your skin meant that had to be a slave. Jesus Christ dying on the cross, they picked him to die over a criminal. Think about that for a second. Now, with all of those things that we're founded on, so lies are going to continually be part of us. So if we don't build a solid framework to understand how to change that, your life's gonna be in turmoil. And even if it's the little white lies, right? Or the social lubricants of what I think that's what psychologists call it. Now, most of those would say that psychologists call this term social lubricants, and they're little white lies. Or you say, I'm fine, and that the dinner was great and the traffic was crazy. So, but here's the thing, when we move from harmless fibs, think about this, to destructive lies, the numbers shift drastically. And according to a research published by the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, about 10% of lies are classified, are you ready for this, as manipulative lies, designed, you ready for this, to gain power, to control, and to protect one's image at someone else's expense. Now imagine that, and then imagine having to attempt to prove that they lied, right? The proving. What are the facts? Because that's when you get legal stuff involved. People are looking for facts, and that's a hard one to find. So I'm telling you, document everything from maybe what your friends are saying to whatever it is. Document. And that's where truly, with all of that being said, lives get ruined from that perspective. Now, I want to pivot and move into my next segment, which is narcissistic behavior and control. Now, I want to talk about narcissism for a second. And I've recently overcome this in the last 3 years. And wow. Narcissism lies, or narcissism, they lie like most of us breathe. Narcissists lie like most of us breathe. Why? Because I'm going to break this down for you. Their survival depends on control, right? It not only control, but image and also manipulation. And narcissistic behavior doesn't just lie to cover up the truth. They lie to redefine reality itself. Now think about this. Think about that narcissistic person. Has no clue because they've not done any growth on themselves. They have not done any therapy. Their circle is all yes, ma'am, and yeses. Their circle doesn't challenge them. And I want to go in a little bit more about narcissistic people. Narcissistic abuse people have this cycle, all right? And that cycle is gaslighting is their favorite weapon. How many of you like, man, I know, right? And they're going to say things like, that's never happened. You're remembering wrong. They'll say things like, you're reacting, or you're overreacting, I should say. And then slowly their lies end up eroding trust in your own perspective. And once you then doubt yourself, guess what? They own the narrative. They won again. And that's the entire thing. They won. And that's the biggest thing. So the danger at all of this is that narcissistic lies often come without consequences. So they live this perpetuous ugly cycle over and over and over because they're the masters, they're the puppeteers at spinning stories, right? And they can shift blame so easily, and then they make themselves look like the victim. It's that whole victim mindset. And that's another thing. Are you living a victim mindset? Now, the psychological aspect behind all that of disorders and lying, I want to break that down for a second. Now that, so think about this. Not all lies, let's be honest, because I'm very self-aware. I'm full of emotional IQ. In fact, I did a whole podcast on emotional IQ. Please check that out. I don't know what episode that is, but check that out. And that's really, really important. But you need to have emotional IQ, always asking yourself, what could I do better in this situation? Always reflecting on yourself, right? And if you cannot answer that question, you might be a narcissist. But I want to go back to what I was going to say. Not all lies come from narcissism. Some are rooted in deeper psychological disorders. So let me break a few of these down for you. Now, there are such things as psychological liars. All right. Now, these are people with the mindset, the fictitious mindset of compulsively lying, telling stories so fluidly, so convincingly that even when confronted with the truth, they double down on them, right? And for them, lies then become a life of reality that they live in. That's who they are. Their whole life is full of lies. Another one is antisocial personal disorder, which is the sociopath, right? And these individuals use lies as weapons of control and power. And here is the scary part. This is the absolute scary part that blows my mind to pieces. So, research shows that 25, well, actually about 33% of people in prison qualify for that antisocial personality disorder. Okay, that's the ASPD. And many never get caught. They operate businesses, they are in relationships, and even in leadership roles, which is extremely scary. So again, emotional IQ sees these things, recognizes these things. So let me continue here. There's another one too, because I want to break a few of these down, like I talked about, these psychological disorders, right? There's another one that I researched that's called borderline personality disorder, where lying here often isn't about power, yet fear. And here's the key: fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. And that lie is used as a desperate attempt to maintain that closeness. So, as I talked about those three, you should be able to find that the point to all of this is that lies don't always come from malice. However, when they're used to manipulate, they can destroy. What do I do with that? That's a bigger, deeper conversation to have other than on this podcast. And I can definitely share that in my coaching program with you. So I want to talk about this, the real life impact that it has, right? So let me paint this in real terms for you. I'm gonna bring up a client that I recently had, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And they told me this. They said, Michael, I was one lie away from losing my marriage, and I had to take a step back, right? And then someone whispered that I had cheated, right? And there was no proof of this at all, and there was no evidence, right? It was only merely words, right? Now, and those words, if you go through the divorce process, and they didn't, but if they go through the divorce process, imagine what that can do in the entirety of that process. And those words, then what do? Because we're human flesh and we make mistakes and we're sinners, they plant seeds of doubt. And even though that client was innocent, their wife trusted in them to crack. And it took years to rebuild what a 5-second lie could shatter. So in that time, I have worked with that client to help them overcome those issues and work with both of those individuals to rebuild that marriage. Now, the danger of all this, lies don't need evidence. That's the crazy thing. You know what they do need? They need ears. And in our world, and we have got social media, we've got rumors, we've got screenshots, we've got single lie can simply go viral before the truth has its actual shoes on, right? So we live in a society of fear based, right? The news sends all of this stuff to us, and I don't watch the news. I'm telling you, listen to a Bible verse or listen to a podcast that's going to grow your faith and who you are as a person. And when we live in those fears, you know, the it goes viral before the truth even can transpire. So as I transition here is why consequences don't always follow throughout the lies. I broke this down, all right, and I want to address the elephant in the room and why some lies are consequence free. And this is something that I had a few clients of mine reach out to me, and they're like, "Well, why is there no consequence for this?" Well, I broke down a few, and it's lack of proof. Lies often live in the shadows of he said, she said, right? So without hard evidence, accountability generally tends to slip away, which is a struggle. And that's why I often tell my clients then to turn to prayer. Prayer will be the superpower that you need in the midst of the season. The other thing is power dynamics, right? If the liar holds status, let's say authority or influence, the victim often then gets silenced or disbelieved, right? And the other part to that is human basis or bias, I should say, human bias, where psychologicals call it the truth default theory, where, and here's what that is we want to believe people. So the liar benefits from our natural tendency to trust, right? Huge, crazy to even think about this. So how do you protect yourself through all of this? Well, you got to guard yourself through the lie that really shatters. And I'm going to give you a few things here on how to do that. And if you're taking notes, now is a good time because this is where I give you the meat and the potatoes. So, first of all, you got to know the red flags. So, as we're talking about narcissistic people and manipulators, what they often do is they often lie when confronted. And they also then, on top of that, what they do is they shift blame, right? They want to immediately push it back on somebody else, or they then set up smoke screens, right? Which creates confusion. And if you can watch for these patterns and know that they're not always isolated incidences. So keep that in mind. That's definitely one red flag. Another way is to really harness and anchor in the truth. I talked about this earlier on the podcast. Keep receipts, keep journaling, keep writing, document. And I know it sounds exhausting. However, when lies continue to surface and you see a repeated behavior, evidence becomes your lifeline. I know that for a fact. So remember that. The other one is building inner resilience. I teach this in my Live to Thrive program. Once you have a combination of resiliency that builds into anti-fragility. Now, here's what I'm going to say. A lie cannot fully destroy you if you're anchored in self-worth. And maybe write that down. Maybe that's one of your models that you live by. A lie cannot fully destroy you if you are anchored in self-worth. As I always say in my coaching platform, your identity isn't defeated by someone else's narrative. Remember that, embrace that, and pray about that, and have God give you the strength through that process. Excuse me. Another big thing through this process, you got to seek support, whether that's through therapy, through life coaching, or maybe in a community life church group. You need a trusted community that can really help you separate truth from manipulation and when your perception feels clouded. I cannot express that enough to you because that is a vital component for creating any of that and how lies can truly shatter, and that will really help you through the process. Now, this next segment that I want to talk about is other voices. And experts in psychology agree on this. They agree the impact of lies often lasts longer than the event itself, which I've got some clients right now after the aftermath, it's still imploding on them. I want to quote, or I want to bring something that I've as I do research and grow it in my personal life, and I help my clients. But there's a doctor that I want to give kudos to. His name is Dr. Paul. Uh, I think it's called Dr. Paul Eichmann, one of the world's leading experts on deception. And he said this best. He said, "When a lie is discovered, the trust it destroys is almost impossible to rebuild." And a journalist at the time, I think the name was Sam Harris, I think it was Harrison Harris, wrote that every lie is a direct assault on the bond between the people. And once it's broken, the relationship rarely returns to when it was or where it was. So as I'm wrapping this up today, and this was like extremely short podcast today, but beneficial by all means, I want to give you some truth bombs here. We cannot stop people from lying. However, we can pray for them. However, we can protect how much power their lies hold over us and pray about that. And not only that, the real danger isn't the lie itself, it's the way it convinces us to doubt ourselves. Don't doubt yourself. Live in an upward trajectory in your faith through biblical references, because lies abandon our truth and then they also surrender our worth. Remember, a lie may shatter you in seconds. However, you're rebuilding. Remember this, you're rebuilding, you're healing, you're growing. And that then becomes your testimony of pure resilience. Now, remember that through your journey. And remember that if you are struggling in any of those areas that we talked about, that you reach out to me. Again, you can go to Michael at LIV, the number 2 thrive.com, and I can really help you build those pieces that you're missing and really create that bridge you've been missing as well. Thank you so much for joining today on this simple, quick, efficient podcast episode. And if this episode really resonated with you, I ask that you share it with someone who is navigating the fallout of lies and maybe needs encouragement. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And when I go live, you'll be able to see it as well. Until next time, my name is Michael Hicks, 1% better in mind, body, and soul, and always stay flexed.